Kids and ladies, welcome to the Junior Classics.
Hi there, I'm Sir Bradley Hasse, a teller of borrowed tales. Join me as I share stories of courage, adventure, and wonder. But don't take my word for it. You can find out for yourself on today's Junior Classic. Happy New Year, Junior Scholars. It is I, Sir Bradley Hasse, guardian of the written word, and your guide through the Junior Classics. Our mission, if you remember, is to safeguard the wisdom in the classics and inspire children and families with a love of good reading and a real and lasting interest in Western literature, history, and scholarship. If this is your first time listening, thank you for joining us, and a very special thank you to my loyal listeners and supporters who tune in each and every episode. I am so glad to be back with you. I'm feeling refreshed after the holidays. Today's episode is another tale from India. I think we have one more story from India left until we move on. Today's story is called The Tiger, the Brahman, and the Jackal by Flora Annie Steele. This one was a lot of fun to record because I had some family in town over the holidays, and it was especially meaningful to me to have my father, my Uncle Brian, my brother Matt, and two cousins Troy and Trevor all featured in this episode. So this was a fun one for the boys to hang out with and record together. Since we have a new year, I have a few announcements to go over. Remember the Junior Classics Art Project? After you listen to the story, or while you listen to the story, do an art project of your choosing based on what you like from the story, and ask your parents to send it by email to juniorclassicspodcast@gmail.com. So you can do a drawing, a Play-Doh thing, make something out of Legos, whatever you want to do, and then snap a picture of it and send it to us. I already have some beautiful ones that I can't wait to share. Secondly, the Junior Classics podcast is now featured on unauthorized.tv. This is a streaming network that has the intellectual outlaws of the internet, daily streams, and premium content from the most intelligent, most outrageous, and most innovative minds on the planet. And Sir Bradley is on there. Very excited. A little daunting, actually, but we have a lot of momentum going for us. Speaking of that, if you've been listening to the show and you like the Junior Classics and you want more of it, please consider supporting the show on Patreon for $5 a month. We've been doing this for a whole year now, and we are ready to really kick it in the gear and move on and grow this thing. Okay, now it's time for
Lost and Found Words!
Listen carefully to these words and their meanings and try and spot them during the show. Our first word today is a Brahman. If you notice, that's in our title today. A Brahman is a priest or holy man from Hindu India. Next, we have the word pious, which was actually a lost and found word back in episode 4, I believe. The Six Swans, actually one of my favorite. If you missed that, go back and give it a listen. But to be pious means to be devoutly religious, God-fearing, devoted, dedicated. Our next word is abide. What a great word is abide. Abide means to accept a decision, to obey, to follow, to keep to stand by, or go along with. I think you get the idea. Our next word is a pipal tree. A pipal tree is also called a sacred fig. It is a large, long-lived fig tree with widely spreading branches that is native from India to southeastern Asia. And it often begins by growing on another plant, which I thought was kind of interesting. It gets its nutrients from the rain and the sunshine, but it has to start its growth on top of another plant. Our next word is refuse. This is another word for trash, waste, debris, litter, garbage. My son used to really like the movie WALL-E. I don't know if you've seen it, but I like it too. And at the beginning, planet Earth has just all that piles of garbage and rubble, lots of refuse around. So think about all the garbage in WALL-E when you think of that word. And our last word today is fodder. This is food, especially dried hay or feed for cattle and other livestock. That's all for our lost and found words. Now, on to the show. Have you ever heard the saying, you should always trust your gut? It is a feeling one gets when something just doesn't seem right. You don't really know what is wrong, you just have a feeling coming from inside you that is trying to tell you something. It's usually wise to trust your gut or instinct because the feeling is based on all the things you know and all the things you have seen in your life. And if you listen to it, it can really keep you out of trouble. In our story today, a poor Brahmin, or holy man, came by a tiger caught in a trap. The tiger pleaded with the Brahmin to release him, but the Brahmin knew better and understood that tiger could easily turn on him and hurt him. But the tiger was persistent and persuasive. The Brahmin ignored his gut feeling that was trying to save his skin and released the tiger. Out popped the tiger and...
The Tiger, the Brahmin, and the Jackal by Flora and Steele.
Once upon a time, a tiger was caught in a trap. He tried in vain to get out through the bars, and rolled and bit with rage and grief when he failed. By chance, a poor Brahmin came by.
Let me out of this cage, O pious one.
Nay, my friend. You would probably eat me if I did.
Not at all.
Swore the tiger with many oaths.
On the contrary, I should be forever grateful and serve you as a slave.
Now, when the tiger sobbed and sighed and wept and swore, the pious Brahmin's heart softened, and at last he consented to open the door of the cage. Out popped the tiger, and seizing the poor man, cried,
What a fool you are! What is to prevent my eating you now? For after being cooped up so long, I am terribly hungry.
In vain, the Brahmin pleaded for his life. The most he could gain was a promise to abide by the decision of the first three things he chose to question as to the justice of the tiger's action. So the Brahmin first asked a pipal tree what it thought of the matter, but the pipal tree replied coldly, "What have you to complain about? Don't I give shade and shelter to everyone who passes by? And don't they in return tear down my branches to feed their cattle? Don't whimper, be a man." Then the Brahmin, sad at heart, went farther afield till he saw a buffalo turning a well wheel. But he fared no better from it, for it answered,
You are a fool to expect gratitude. Look at me. While I gave milk, they fed me on cottonseed and oil cake. But now I am dry. They yoke me here and give me refuse as fodder.
The Brahmin, still more sad, asked the road to give him its opinion.
My dear sir, how foolish you are to expect anything else. Here am I, useful to everybody, yet all, rich and poor, great and small, trample on me as I go past, giving me nothing but the ashes of their pipes and the husks of their grain.
On this, the Brahmin turned back sorrowfully, and on the way he met a jackal who called out,
Why, what's the matter, Mr. Brahmin? You look as miserable as a fish out of water.
The Brahmin told him all that had occurred.
How very confusing. Would you mind telling me all over again? For everything's got so mixed up.
The Brahmin told it all over again, but the jackal shook his head in a distracted sort of way, and still could not understand.
It's very odd, but it all seems to go in at one ear and out at the other. I will go to the place where it all happened,
and then perhaps I shall be able to give a judgment.
So they returned to the cage, by which the tiger was waiting for the Brahmin and sharpening his teeth and claws.
You've been away a long time. But now, let us begin our dinner.
Our dinner? What a remarkably delicate way of putting it.
Thought the wretched Brahmin, as his knees knocked together with fright.
Give me 5 minutes, my lord, in order that I may explain matters to the Jackal here, who is somewhat slow in his wits.
The tiger consented, and the Brahmin began the whole story over again, not missing a single detail, and spinning as long a yarn as possible.
Oh, my poor brain! Oh, my poor brain!
Cried the Jackal, wringing its paws.
Let me see. How did it all begin? You were in the cage, and the tiger came walking by.
Pooh! What a fool you are! I was in the cage.
Of course. Yes, I was in the cage. No, I wasn't. Dear, where are my wits? Let me see. The tiger was in the Brahmin, and the cage came walking by. No, that's not it either. Well, don't mind me, but begin your dinner, for I shall never understand.
Yes, you shall. I'll make you understand. Look here. I am the tiger.
Yes, my lord.
And that is the Brahmin.
Yes, my lord.
And that is the cage.
Yes, my lord.
And I was in the cage. Do you understand?
Yes, no, please, my lord.
Well?
Please, my lord. How did you get in?
How? Why, in the usual way, of course.
Oh, dear me. My head is beginning to whirl again. Please don't get angry, my lord. But what is the usual way?
At this, the tiger lost patience, and jumping into the cage cried,
This way! Now do you understand how it was?
Perfectly.
grinned the Jackal, as he dexterously shut the door.
And if you will permit me to say so, I think matters will remain as they were.
The end.
Well, guys, what do you think? Should the Brahmin have let the tiger out of the cage? Or should he have trusted his gut and left the tiger alone? You know, I have to be honest with you guys, and I've told you this before. At least half of these stories I've never read before. And so when I read them, I often struggle to think of the lesson in the story. But I'm usually quite surprised and satisfied with what I come up with, and I like what I came up with today. The Brahmin knew the tiger might eat him if he let him out of the cage. He said so himself, and he was exactly right. A tiger is a tiger after all. To expect anything else would be naive or foolish, especially when the tiger has been trapped without food and is very hungry. And at first, the Brahmin refused. But then the tiger boldly lied and swore with many oaths, saying, "Not at all. I should be forever grateful and serve you as a slave." The line about swearing with many oaths jogged something in my memory. First of all, an oath is a promise to do or not to do something, often calling on God, a god, or a sacred object as a witness. And this part of the story reminded me of what the Bible says in Matthew 5:37. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Wow, evil? Man, at this point, the Brahmin should have turned and fled from the tiger. I also wonder if the Brahmin started thinking to himself, it would be kind of nice to have a slave. Who else has a tiger slave? I could become a very important man. So maybe that influenced the Brahmin. Then the tiger began to continue with fake displays of sobbing and sighing and weeping and more swearing, which eventually manipulated the Brahmin into agreeing to open the cage. And no sooner had the tiger been released than he said,
"What a fool you are! What is to prevent my eating you now? For after being cooped up so long, I am terribly hungry."
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Decisions have consequences. So, junior scholars, our first lesson this year is this: trust your gut. There is probably something not right if you have a bad feeling. So, seek help from someone you trust if you have time. Also, do not trust people who swear or promise on God or gods to do something, and certainly don't do that yourself. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. And don't let tigers out of cages. That's all for this week, junior scholars. I am Sir Bradley Hasse. Be brave, be loyal, and speak the truth. Now, for you parents out there, I want you to understand why we are doing this, what we are trying to achieve, and how you can help us. This is a rescue operation to preserve the classics and the wisdom within before it is lost forever. Our goal is to inspire children with a love of good reading by safeguarding and breathing new life into the greatest stories in history, and empower you, the parents, with a resource you can trust to enrich your child's mind and spirit. We don't want these stories and the wisdom within to be forgotten, so our children don't have to learn these lessons on their own. The most important thing you can do for us is to spread the message and tell others about these stories and what we are doing. If you want to donate, we would love that as well. My promise is that 100% of donations will go to building the impact and quality of the Junior Classics. If you have feedback and thoughts on how we can do things better, please send an email to juniorclassicspodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to the Junior Classics.